And our second session is actually a bit of a panel, and that is the MacAdmins Foundation. So I will go ahead and introduce you to our speakers today. And I would first like to introduce Dr. K. So go ahead and say hello.
Hey, y'all.
Caleb Coy.
Good morning, everyone.
Chris Dawe. Oh, sorry, Chris, you're muted. Let me go ahead and unmute, and they should be able to hear you now.
Hello. Good to be here again.
And Rich Trouton.
Hey, folks.
Also, Tom Bridge, who gave our previous presentation, but is currently stepped out for a minute, but shall be returning. So with that, we'll go ahead and start the presentation of introducing the MacAdmins Foundation.
Are my slides being shared?
They sure are. You're set to go.
Okay, let me make sure I can remember how Keynote works. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of MacAdmins Campfire Sessions. Let's see. We are here today to introduce the MacAdmins Foundation, which you may have heard of. I am Chris Dawe, the board secretary of the MacAdmins Foundation, and I'm joined by the MacAdmins Foundation founding board, who are, as you've seen from left to right in the picture, Dr. Emily Kausalik-Whittle, Tom Bridge, myself, Rich Trouton, and Caleb Coy, all of whom have been looking at one another just like this for approximately a year. This is what we look like in Apple's world. And we got a specific agenda here today. Every one of us has a way of telling the story of how this came to be. So I'm going to sort of run through a slightly off-kilter history of how we got to be here with commentary from the board ongoing. We'll talk a little bit about our mission, talk about immediate goals, point to the future, and then afterward, we hope to have as much discussion and Q&A as we can in order to answer questions from the community and answer questions that, heck, even one another might have. Because really, when you start to think about it and you start to think about the idea of what we're doing here, our preliminary goal of paying for the Slack instance looks like a little bit of a stretch from the beginning. And I thought it would be beneficial to talk about how we got to where we are. A bunch of MacAdmins asking our community, our vendors, and our friends for money as though we were a public radio station. So how did we get here? MacAdmins have congregated in a lot of places over the years, and I've been in the community for longer than I care to admit, long enough to have sought advice in Usenet news groups, moving on to email listservs, in-person conferences, a couple of famous IRC channels, various message boards and forums, and then as we moved in kind of the late aughts into Twitter. This culminated for me in the experience at conferences in the late aughts and early 2010s, where I found myself introducing myself to others and being introduced to others via Twitter handles instead of names. The community bounced back and forth between Twitter, email, and IRC until a group of MacAdmins who were frustrated with the limitations of all the existing technologies decided to take a look at this Slack thing. Caleb Coy was one of those folks.
So we tried Slack.
Yeah. The group created a Slack instance, announced it on Twitter, and folks started to join it. At the time, I think there were two main IRC channels for MacAdmins, one OS X server and a Jump Nation channel, because, why have one when you can have two? But IRC presented some barriers to entry for a lot of the community, and Slack mostly solved that. And so the founders of the instance found that if you build it, they'll start to show up. Number of accounts started to climb. The growth generated its own energy. Members started actively recruiting in the community using a variety of means. A team of admins formed to help govern the community and resolve conflicts, wrote a code of conduct, and the Slack itself, or as we call it, the Slack, started to embody a broad set of principles around independence in the sense that it welcomed both admins and vendors to participate in the community while establishing rules designed to ensure that the Slack remains centered on the MacAdmins themselves. As this growth continued, the community ran into its first significant obstacle, which is that a free Slack instance only makes the most recent 10,000 messages available for search or review. The more the user base grew, the more messages were posted, and the faster the messages would disappear into inaccessibility. And again, community members and Slack employees stepped in and brought the MacAdmin Slack under the umbrella of an internal program that allowed a Slack staffer to sponsor a Slack instance, converting it to a higher license tier. In short order, this solved the scrollback problem and effectively turned the Slack into a resource with unlimited historical search. The number of accounts climbed, climbed, and you get to the point where you look at it this week and you see that the membership numbers is significantly larger than the active duty militaries of many smaller nations. And in the midst of this day, we'd occasionally marvel at our good luck and thank whatever gods we believed in that this resource was available to our community and to our vendors. Thousands of users, thousands of channels, well, probably hundreds of channels, thousands of conversations. As Emily memorably put it in a recent conversation, it's like a permanent conference hallway track, and it never closes. At the same time, there was kind of an undercurrent of, wow, what if we were paying for this? What would that be like? Well, in November 2020, news broke that Salesforce had shown interest in acquiring Slack, and in the spring and early summer of 2020, that possibility started to look like it might be a reality. Ask, and you shall receive. Well, it would be fair to say at that point that we hadn't really given more than cursory thought to planning because we're kind of an improvisational community to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
All this made the conversation more serious, turned it into a, wow, what if we do have to pay for this? This was especially the case because the MacAdmin Slack had already changed employee sponsors once or twice as Slack's internal staffing changed, and we all know that acquisitions often end up triggering job changes, internal policy changes, and so on. A group of us discussing this all in the background, decided to look at this really for real. So how much would it cost to pay for this? Fortunately, even though we have that 48,000 users registered, Slack calculates licensing according to a rolling average of active users over a 30-day period. So our initial assumption about paying for every account turned out to be a little bit pessimistic, and we were able to estimate based on some much more appealing numbers. But still, only charging for active accounts makes the pricing of an instance somewhat more palatable and results in more appealing numbers than you get at first glance. However, as Tom likes to describe it, the cost of our Slack is approximately that of not one, but two Ferrari Romas. And never had an emoji been more appropriate. Could we ask for people to pay for this as individuals? Even if that were a reasonable request, how would we own and govern this instance? Was a single vendor going to take this all on for us? Probably not. Would we want a single vendor to take this on? Almost certainly not.
No.
So the group that became the founding board talked and talked and talked some more. And we eventually determined that the most feasible path forward was to form an entity and try to raise the money to pay for it, and that it made the most sense to organize this as a nonprofit. Forming a nonprofit involved just about a year of work, a period that was considerably shortened thanks to Andy Fife of Fife Consultant, who is a consultant and arts administrator who specializes in founding nonprofit organizations. Andy helped us assemble a board of directors, develop a mission, write bylaws, and apply with the Internal Revenue Service for nonprofit status. Through Slack community contacts, we also enlisted the assistance of Molly Eckerd at mollyhanna.com to develop a brand identity for the organization that would help us express our mission and allow us to approach major donors as a professional entity. In this process, we spent a lot of time hammering out a mission statement for submission to the IRS to describe our activity, which is as a requirement of registration, and ultimately landed on advancing the global community of people who manage Apple devices at large and small scales. This is written into our founding and governing documents. We also discovered, while this is going on, that Slack may be able to extend nonprofit pricing to achieve further price breaks to us, which made the whole project even more appealing and allowed us to set some fundraising goals. Coming back to the mission, as we were discussing this, we spurred some additional, these discussions helped spur associated sets of mission principles. During discussions, we kept returning to the idea that A, we do not want to exclude people at all based on cost, and B, we really want this community to remain independent or of as much external influence and control as possible. In other words, we want this to remain a space for Apple admins first and foremost, and we wrote these principles into the bylaws. As we talked further, while our near-term goal is to, we realized that while our near-term goal is to preserve the Slack instance as is, our conversations with colleagues and community members helped us understand that while Slack is critical now, there is more in heaven and earth than is thought of in that philosophy. And after we secure that, there may be more to add in addition to just Slack. Meanwhile, we filled out forms. And if I may say, really, Tom and Rich filled out forms, submitted our registration to the Internal Revenue Service in September 2021, and received approval after some silence in April 2022. While we were doing that, we were building our infrastructure, codifying organizational documents, starting building a website, started developing banking and fundraising infrastructure that you can see on MacAdmins.org today, and got involved with Apple training to help collaborate on a way to make certification exams available at low or no cost. Fortunately, we had most of our ducks in a row when Apple mentioned us in 2 paragraphs of a press release talking about their training. And we were almost ready to go. We got up early one morning to take the emergency board photo that you saw at the beginning of this presentation and build a MacAdmins Foundation channel. Now that we've launched and we're public, I think it's fair to say that our near-term goals are continuing with fundraising, working with Apple on the training scholarship program that we have started to develop. Ideally, we would license Slack for a period of time that would allow us to stabilize the community and begin planning for the future. So what's next? In terms of what we've been through so far, one of the first things we've realized is that this is an awful lot of work for 5 people. We want to bring in more people to help. We want to add board members. We want to look at additional programs. We've discussed a lot of different things, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We've got a lot of ideas, and we're eager to hear yours. So with that, I would hand it over to the rest of the board and say, you know, where are we now? Where do we think we are?
Who would like to take that? Anybody? Any board member want to predict the present?
Should we transition to, I mean, as much as I want to solicit donations to our organization,
yeah, we
can
can
switch to having everybody up so that they can see all of our cute faces as we talk.
Well, as you talk,
Is everybody back?
I think it's very hard to scroll through Teams, but I think Everyone except for Tom is back, and so teams will allow us to send an individual at a time.
Oh, okay. I guess one thing I can start off with, for those that maybe missed it at the top, my name is Emily. People tend to call me Dr. K in real life because my last name is very complicated. I'm the co-chair along with Tom Burridge of the MacAdmins Foundation. And one of the things that we have been asked about pretty quickly, and even in our initial conversations with just friends, I'm like, so if we do this, like, what do you think? What's the vibe check? And it was a lot of, how do we help? What can we do? How do we get involved? People really want to help. And it's very in line with the vibe of the MacAdmins community at large and why we wanted to do this in the first place, which is we are a very open, sharing, committed, passionate group of people that want to step in and do what they can to, you know, help others and share knowledge, and people really want to get involved. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out and would love to continue to chat with people about is a mentorship program of being able to connect people with different experiences, different passions, different topics of interest across the larger MacAdmins community in some kind of structured mentorship program of some kind. And we've had some initial conversations with folks in the community to be like, how the heck do you even, and again, we're all IT people, right? What's the infrastructure behind a mentorship program? Like, we don't really know, and have gotten some good guidance there. And if a mentorship program is something you're interested in being in, or have ideas around, we have a volunteer page on the website with a form that you can send in so that show your interest. A lot of people have already sent in the contact form, which is great. We haven't replied to that many people yet because we're just still figuring out what the heck we want to do, but we love that people are already wanting to get involved and expect to hear more about a mentorship program at some point later this year, I think, once we figure out how to get that going. Guess I can keep talking. Another one that we got asked about pretty early on from very charitable members of the organization is, so I work for an organization that does employer matching. Like, how do we make sure that if we give a donation that we can get employer matching through our employer and stuff like that? We do already have profiles up with Benevity and Deed, partially because a few of us on the board work at organizations that use Benevity. We got requests from people in the community already through their organizations for us to be on Deed so they can do employee matching, which is awesome. So that should be live now too. I put a blog post up yesterday that has some links to other ways to donate, and I will probably be writing up more stuff on the website around how to do employer matching and that kind of stuff for folks that want to maximize contributions to the organization. And I am happy to answer questions about that too. As a JAMF employee, we leverage Benevity for that. We have employer matching from JAMF for donations made through the Benevity platform. So it's something that we're very passionate about, and I'm happy to talk about that with other folks that are interested too.
All right, fantastic. Well, we do have the panel on the screen now, the four of you. We don't have Tom here yet, but perhaps we can start with a couple questions that we have here. The first one is, Dr. K, where did you get that banner on the wall?
So this banner was kind of an ad hoc community moment that happened, I think, around the time that we started putting the initial foundation stuff together. That just a big group of us kind of put in an order from Oxford Pennant and got them made. There really aren't, I'll
Very
say
cool.
this just to cover my tracks for future purpose. We don't have any plans to do anything with this at any kind of organizational level in the future right now.
Cool.
I don't have any better answer than that for that at the moment, unless someone else wants to add on to that.
That was definitely a limited release that was sponsored by a member of the community who was like going around to various people he knew. It's like, hey, I made this. Do you want one? And unfortunately, I don't think it went Slack wide. With 40,000 people, that would have been a lot of orders probably. But
Right.
yeah, it's
True.
while it is cool, and while I think it sums up kind of the vibe of the MacAdmins Slack, it's also not officially part of the MacAdmins Foundation. We just love it.
And the concept earlier was mentioned that we kind of looked to public radio as part of our inspiration for this, and along those lines, we would absolutely love to someday be able to say, like, support the MacAdmins Foundation and get your dope tote or something along those lines, but we're not quite there yet.
No.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of infrastructure involved in something like that, and I will say, as someone who was kind of close to the camp flag production process, the logistics of doing it the way that it was done were fairly onerous at the time.
Tough to scale.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Anonymous had another comment, and they're surprised that the logo is in all caps with the number of times that cap MAC versus camel case
I never
Mac
thought about that.
have been discussed on the MacAdmins Slack channel. I would have thought you'd go with Mac, but nonetheless, thank you for forming the foundation, and hopefully I got the inflections correct there.
You got
Well,
us on that.
Well, I mean, if
I'll-
you look at MacAdmins on the website, we do properly capitalize capital M, lowercase a, lowercase c. But of course, for where we have everything all capitalized, of course, MAC is going to be all capitalized because it goes along with that. But yes, normally we are very aware of how to properly spell Mac.
I mean, we could have gone like full Apple and done MAC lowercase and admins camel cased with just the A, but that might have gotten weird.
Sounds like
Doesn't
we
have
need to
quite
talk
the
to
same
Molly.
effect.
Hey Tom, welcome back.
Thanks, friends. Sorry I'm
Ladies and
late.
gentlemen, Tom Bridge.
Thank you, Ken. Where were we?
Q&A.
Oh, exciting.
We were
Just
just
in time for the fun part.
we discussed the banner, which came up again, and we just discussed the capitalization of Mac.
Ah,
Very important
Oh, and I
topics.
guess to actually answer the question, which was where did it come from? It's been in my house. I brought it to the office and I attached it on the wall with a roll of painter's tape for today. Give you a real answer.
Somebody-
Tom, I talked a little bit about wanting to build a mentorship program and some of the other stuff that we are wanting to do. Because we want to have a little time to speak about what our vision is, maybe roadmap style, right? Like, and through the end of this year, maybe over the next year, next 3 years, kind of thing.
Sure.
I think the group would probably love to hear a little bit from you about that, co-chair.
yeah. I think if we think about for a second what it makes the MacAdmins community special is that we share. And that we have these relationships with each other where we're sharing software, we're sharing tips and tricks, we're building tools, we're doing all of these things, and we're not expecting, necessarily contributions back from the community for that. Doing that in such a way where we get to do that for the mentorship in terms of how we build more MacAdmins is really important, and that was why I'm so excited about our partnership, our relationship with Apple on the certification front, where we can start to give access to MacAdmins who maybe don't have a company that's going to back their play for $300 worth of certifications. We can do those kind of things as the community and build more MacAdmins that way. I think that that's a big part of why we're here. I mean, I am only the product of every other MacAdmin I've ever worked with or for. And, helping people find those kind of supportive environments is so critical.
Yeah, to that point, I can say that I personally wouldn't be anywhere near where I am in my career without this community.
Same. And I think we all feel very strongly about paying it forward. Knowing that where we have gotten is almost entirely due to the connections we've made through this community. And all of the wonderful people in it. And, we all have our blogs and we've got the podcast, and now we've got this great foundation to try to really give some structure behind the community and make sure that it's supported and ready for the future. As you know, Apple becomes more and more part of the enterprise and organizations, and the need is going to keep being there. And Apple has shown that they likely feel that way too, with having brand new certification for people that do the exact kind of stuff that a lot of us do. So the alignment is there, and we're excited that people are excited. And it makes it feel good that we put all this work into it and everybody's on board so far anyway.
Yeah, the initial response we've seen has been just overwhelmingly positive.
Yes. And thank you to all of the people in the community out there who we talked to kind of hone this message over time. Recognizing the timeline that Chris discussed, we started this almost a year ago. And, figuring out that like, hey, this is going to take a little bit of time to do. This is a big project. And, all of the boulders, everybody that we've talked with privately and publicly who's helped us hone these messages has been so helpful to the community. Thank you. And I also want to say a special thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors out there. The people who, said, hey, I found a donation page and I just gave you money. God bless you people.
Yes.
Not to mention all of the people at companies that have said, we want to, as, a company, as Kanji, as Jamf, as JumpCloud, really power the future of this nonprofit organization. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, the outpouring of generosity from the community has just, I was
bowled over.
Yes.
Yeah, I was surprised and humbled by it, because it has just been amazing.
Well, and, we've talked about this process of setting up the MacAdmins Foundation as it exists now has been in the works for about a year plus. But even these conversations go back a couple of years prior to that, of that looming dread of what happens if this gets taken away from us? Like, what happens to the community? Like, how do we reconvene? How do we protect from that happening? And as of right now, the response that we've gotten from the community and from our vendors to help support this for the future has taken several years of weight off of my shoulders. And I feel lighter today internally than I have in a very long time, knowing that the community is secure and has a home.
Well, yeah. And, I think that we've opened up our conversations with our friends at Slack around this, and they were bowled over that, like, holy crap, there are that many of you. And also, how do we make sure that this is a good, environment for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. And along those lines, Stacy commented, what a great resource. Would love to help contribute money. MacAdmins platform as a podcast have been such a huge asset to my growth over the years, and look forward to more opportunities to grow and help grow baby admins grow. I might have had an extra grow. But thank you, Stacey. We definitely appreciate that. There's another question from Anthony Reimer. The foundation is set up as a nonprofit in the United States. I guess it's not a question. Excuse me. There's no question marks. Talk a little about your thoughts and the related logistical hurdles about getting international involvement.
So, go ahead, Rich.
I was going to say that is an interesting question, because we definitely have had a number of questions from folks saying, hey, I'm contributing from my country. Is it tax deductible in my country? And unfortunately, the answer is probably going to be no. We are a new nonprofit, and we are registered in the United States. And at least for these United States of America, we could say your donation would be tax deductible. But we simply don't, at this point, don't have the infrastructure to support that in more than one nation at this point.
But there are more ways to donate from a conceptual mind frame than just monetarily, right? Right.
Yes.
Well, and this is where I put on my product manager hat and use words that I've been taught, which are, we certainly hear that feedback. We understand that, this is something that's very important to all of our members, and that we want to work hard to make sure that your donations can take more benefit for you in the future. So, if you have, if there are people in different countries, and, we obviously recognize that there are, the European Union, British folks, has reciprocity for some of these kind of things. And there are places, for us to, have entities in other locales. And that is certainly something that we are going to take under advisement, look at, try and figure out. It was also, we recognize it's taken us all year to get the US 501c3 up. 6 months of that was painful waiting in silence, unfortunately, while the IRS has evaluated our organization and decided if we were actually a charitable operation. And then 30 very painstaking and scary days where they asked a lot of pointed questions like, what are you again? We don't understand. Tell us why you're different from a professional organization than as a nonprofit. And then we explain, and they're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But lots of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of processes that are there. So it's a huge amount of work to get registered as a charity because of that tax deduction option.
And if I may, in some of the discussion, I think one of the first questions we had was from someone in Australia. And we found that essentially the regulations of tax deductibility to nonprofits in the United States tend to depend on local law, that is, in this case, Australian law. Doing some Googling around and seeing a suggestion that there is at least some facility, for example, Canadian donations to U.S. charities, but I'm going to have to suggest that you look at your own applicable tax code, at least for the moment, because we wouldn't want to be responsible for giving that legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I am a historian first and a MacAdmin second.
But I will say, going back to how we had briefly discussed our mentorship, our plans for a mentorship program, an excellent way someone could give back to the MacAdmins community if you speak a language other than English is helping to support MacAdmins whose first language or none of their languages are English. Yeah. This would be an excellent opportunity to help link up experienced German MacAdmins to folks getting started, experienced Indian MacAdmins, Australian MacAdmins. Of course, Australians do reportedly speak English.
Theoretically.
But that kind of thing where we could, much love to my Australian colleagues. But that kind of thing where we could have someone speaking in literally, the same language, and be able to help someone out without trying to figure out through the barrier of a language that's not your first one.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Amazing. We have another comment, the banner.
I was going to say donations don't have to be monetary. And, now that said, we do need money. Money is used still for exchange of goods and services. And, we are happy to talk with your organization. We are happy to talk with your individual self about best ways to go about that and how to be, donate.
And perhaps a fundraiser using the banner.
That is definitely something we will take under advisement because there's definitely a swag play here. Fear not, we have an incredible logo designed by a friend of the MacAdmin community. And Molly did an amazing job with both our logo and with some of the roundels and some of the stationary pieces. There are all sorts of good things that we can use for that.
Fantastic.
Addressing the next question, we probably won't do NFTs, but just like an NFT, you can right-click and save the logo if you want it. We're totally okay with that.
Amazing, that's great. Interesting question from Bruce. Is there anything from the old Mac Enterprise group that you can make use of? Perhaps mistakes, lessons learned? No tea, no shade, but.
To be honest, I don't know on that one because we were kind of starting out with a clean sheet. Full disclosure, though, I am the current owner of the MacEnterprise.org domain name that was passed on to me.
Well, right. Here's what we do with it: we take that domain and we forward it to MacAdmins.org. That's what we can get out of it.
Yeah, but I mean,
does it get?
Right now none. Because it's not. I just own the domain name. I don't actually have a site set up for it. I think the thing that is the biggest lesson is that the MacEnterprise.org organization did also set themselves up with the board, but I think they really were looking for a mission on what to do. And that is something I think that we have in spades, frankly. It's supporting the community, it's helping keeping those lines of communication open. You know, first and foremost, I think our first goal is just making sure the lights stay on for Slack. But moving on from that, we want to get into these mentorship programs. We want to be able to, assist MacAdmins with the Apple Scholarship Program that we have worked with Apple on, things like that. And we're also, this is something where the board members are also fully aware that we're not going to be able to do everything ourselves. So we are welcoming folks to come with your ideas and also your energy to help push this stuff forward. Because I mean, I've definitely, when we were meeting on the mentorship program with folks, I was like, this is amazing. This is fantastic. I don't have time to run this. I need someone else to run this.
But all the ideas, and it's just so, even just to speak frankly, even just getting the 501c3 paperwork and stuff off the ground, we all have full-time jobs. It was overwhelming at times to try to keep up with all of the stuff that we needed to do. We knew the importance of it. So we fortunately work with colleagues and have loved ones who understand our passion for the community and what it has provided for us as individuals and as professionals, and they've been cool with it up until this point. But we definitely need more. We need more bandwidth. We need more people power, I think, to really accomplish more with the foundation as we've started it. We've talked about this a lot amongst ourselves. But the idea is that we are all here to get it started, and then we hand the keys to the castle to the next group.
Yep.
Right.
Just as the whole point of the community is to help grow and bring up new MacAdmins in the workplace, we as the foundation want to bring up new leaders of the community, and so that we don't have to do this forever.
Yeah, I definitely have no plans to be board member for life. If that happens, I have failed. I have failed immensely. Ideally, I want to step away in a couple of years and hand this off to someone who we all can trust to do the job.
That's exactly it. And, we think about all of the things that we learn in our IT operation. It's that we ought to have good written procedures. We ought to have good understanding of what it is that we do in such a way that, if we take a vacation, if we win the lottery, if we get hit by a bus, that our organization can carry on without us. That is never more true than here. And so what we are going to be looking for are volunteers who are willing to sit on panels like this one and listen and learn. And we're excited about that.
Okay, there's some additional feedback here. The mentorship program sounds great and very valuable for younger MacAdmins. To continue the growth, the community, it would be also great to see scholarships for new MacAdmins to attend in-person conferences, maybe internship promotion, resume reviews, other junior level resources, which I think is also fantastic.
Yeah, another big one that came up in initial conversations and just things that we want to be able to do are grants and scholarships for attending conferences, for travel, for room and board, for things like that, because attending a conference isn't just paying for the conference ticket, right? It's getting there, it's staying there, it's resources to help support your family. If you have family you're supporting while you're gone, there's a lot involved, right? That's one piece of the puzzle. Another thing on my wish list, and it's maybe a little bit of, I've got a bit of a bias there, would be having some kind of program around supporting user groups. Maybe a user group is spun up very grassroots and it wants to be able to provide food and beverage, or maybe it needs to pay a speaker to come talk at a meetup. That kind of stuff too is ideas that we have a lot of ideas floating around that stuff to really, provide resources for the community in that way with what we have available to us.
And speaking just from the perspective of the Slack admin team, like one of our most important goals was to make sure that the instance felt welcoming and inclusive as a place for anyone, regardless of who they are or where they are in their career journey, or if they're even at all connected to Mac administration. Just curious, like anyone can come and be a part of the community. And we very much want to see that extended to the in-person events. And there's a lot of barriers in place at every level for people in underrepresented communities and underserved communities to make it to these things. And we want to remove as many of those barriers as we can. So yes, Matt, thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Passing the vibe
Scott,
check.
Yeah. Scott Blake asks, how large do you think the board should be today, not even taking growth into account? And do you see any subcommittees forming?
Subcommittees, absolutely.
Mhm.
We're going to need subcommittees to operate. What we're trying to figure out is what's the right format for everything. We feel like there's also a difference between subcommittee responsible for policy and working group responsible for execution.
Yeah,
And
task
so-
forces.
Yeah, task forces that are going to be focused on those kind of things, and we're working on the exact definitions to go into an amendment for our bylaws. Right now, there are 5 of us on the board, and I was going to say we're all here, or I was going to say I don't see Chris anymore, but I'm assuming Chris is here somewhere. Oh, there he is. I see him now.
I'm still here.
I'm not as think as you, Brian. I am. I'm thinker. But can I see us growing as a board? Yes, but there are. If we think about the way in which a organization operates, you need to have a quorum to govern, and you need to have available members to operate. And so what we've got to make sure is that, one, you can't grow too large. You grow too large, you can no longer make decisions. You can no longer act as a team, or you can, but it takes a lot more work associated with all of those things. And so that's a big part of it. Secondarily, the working group model, the task force model, the subcommittee model is going to be important. We're going to have one for mentorships. There will be one for scholarships. There's going to be a working group for our sponsors, and industry and otherwise. And offering opportunities there is going to be really important to our long-term development. So look for more.
There's another group that's been integral to the growth and success of the company that doesn't get as much of a voice as maybe they would like, and that's partly for a reason, and that's our vendor community, who are actively engaged and are interacting with customers, potential customers, coworkers, all day, every day. And we've taken great pains to make sure that there's vendor guidelines in our code of conduct, and that we keep things from getting spammy and salesy, and our vendors are really, really agreeable to that, and they abide by that. But we also want to try to work with them to find ways that we can continue growing together, because they are such an important part. So, I can definitely foresee there being some sort of committee or working group around revising the vendor guidelines that were written by our admins as a response to a perceived need. So we're definitely open to that as well.
And then on top of that, we'll need people to help us manage all of the committees and task forces and working groups too. So there's like a whole, we've mocked up an org chart. We've been thinking about it. It's, putting it into practice and figuring out how to make it scalable and if anyone here or that watches this in the future has been a part of a nonprofit, has seen how some of that structure stuff works, wants to share experiences, we are happy to talk with you and learn from you. We appreciate the feedback and the guidance and the love and all that
I think
stuff.
I would say that it's been very interesting for us in the sense that historically either most of us has worked for very large organizations or worked within very small organizations, and a huge part of the benefit to working with Andy Fife on the consulting side when we were developing the organization was his experience having built organizations and him joining meetings and saying, in 3 weeks, you will naturally begin to have this conversation about this type of growth, just because this is what organizations like yours tend to do, and find that lo and behold, he's essentially a prophet of this type of work. He's essentially just right about all of those things. And so that was wonderfully helpful. And a year sounds like a lot of time. If we had tried to do this by ourselves, oh wow.
Yep.
Yeah, Andy's help was
exactly right.
invaluable.
Andy.
He's not watching this talk, but we loved Andy.
No.
We loved working with him, and it was just an awesome experience.
I had
That
weird
sounds great.
finance questions constantly, and he was able to answer a lot of them.
That's a great. That's So we have another comment from Bruce. It sounds like some of this maybe documented resource or whatever is going to be something that is done for entry level Macs at organizations. And is there an eye for kind of making those more generic and focused like as resources for a greater community instead of more of a narrower industry or audience?
I'd love to hear a proposal from the community on this. This is
Yeah,
exactly the kind of
absolutely.
thing that I would love to have someone bring us a proposal and us be able to say, absolutely, just run with this. To be honest, that is not something that I think we've really discussed, but I can definitely see the value.
That's great. Another anonymous question, and this may be slightly out the purview, but speaking of childcare, what about childcare at conferences? Obviously, love the conference organizer to do this, but maybe the foundation could help get it started.
All I have to say is normalize childcare at conferences.
Yeah,
There we
That's
go.
really all I have to say about it. And my wife is also a product manager. She goes to WordPress conferences on the regular. Most of the WordCamps in the United States have, and the ones abroad, have some form of childcare available. There are all kinds of contractors to make this possible. I know that I would pay extra to make sure that that was available, because I'd love to bring Charlie to some of these conferences and get him to meet the kids of my friends, right? If there was a
Yeah.
program for them along those lines, I would love that. That would
future
be
MacAdmins
amazing.
program.
I was going to say,
Get
maybe
tiny
like-
T-shirts.
that can be a volunteer opportunity for us as an organization, is to figure out like code camp for kids, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
teach you Swift with playgrounds. And if we can figure out a bunch of different ways to do that with, iPads as donations. I'm sure Steve Heyman might volunteer 5 minutes of his time to come address the group. And our kids might never be the same, but in a good way, I hope. I think that's a good opportunity for us as a community to kind of say, hey, can we do this? Is this a thing that's reasonable to do?
I also think you could work this into an InfoSec workshop, because after all, kids will red team for you for free.
Yes.
Yes.
Some great feedback.
Actually, just heard about a
Whoever
story
can
that
turn off parental restrictions first.
Yes.
just
With
heard
the
a story of
hoodie
that
or
happening to
whatever.
someone at my company yesterday. So
That's
You know,
funny.
much respect for the MacAdmins who do K through 12, because you got to deal with this all the time.
Yes.
And I'll just kind of parrot what was already mentioned. And as someone who has a small child, I would love it if I could bring her with me and know that during the day, during conference hours, she's got somewhere to play and have fun and be safe. And then we're traveling to all these really fun locations, which is how conference organizers are getting people out in the first place. And then I can enjoy it with my family and not
Yeah.
feel like I have to spend a bunch of time away. Gosh, I'd love that.
Yeah,
this
I'd
is
love
a
to be able to
Take
bring
your
my
notes
fantastic
dog.
down and make
idea.
sure we talk about it again later.
Absolutely
able to bring my
fantastic
daughters.
idea for us to take up.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's great. Can we talk about the IRS reporting requirements? Get some serious
Yeah, the
Into the
IRS
weeds.
requires us to report every year. There's a form called a Form 990 that we have to fill out and apply, and essentially says I took in X amount of dollars, I spent X amount of dollars on program and staff and all sorts of other stuff. We'll be working with an accountant on that. His name is Mike
Yes.
Smith. He's super nice guy, and as a result, we'll be paying him some money to do that, because none of us want to go to jail. And that is
Correct.
exactly what would happen if I was responsible for filling out the 990. I would make a terrible mistake, and you would see Tom would be prisoner 24602, and you'd have to send me letters at the Federal Correctional Institute near DC. We
That
don't
would be
want that.
quite a
We don't
podcast
want
episode.
Yeah, Tom,
Tom, go to prison.
I'm pretty sure I'd be right there in prison with you, since I'm treasurer. But yeah,
Yeah,
we will be
so-
working with but we will be working with an accountant to make sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and that a small part of what folks are going to be donating are going to make sure that we're doing all this properly.
That's exactly
The
right.
operational costs. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, we have all sorts of ways to budget. We're going to be using probably QuickBooks Online, so because it's an easy solution for all of this stuff for nonprofits, and it'll generate the Form 990 at the end of the year. Mike will sign off as a CPA, And of course, that means he goes to jail if something bad happens. So he doesn't want to go to jail either.
We'll be
Mike's
questioned in
grandkids
connection.
would be very angry at me if that were to happen. So we're working our dead level best to make sure no one goes to jail because of the MacAdmins Foundation.
Yeah, we're tracking all the receipts and making sure everything is accounted for, just to
Very good.
help the keep us out of jail project going.
Correct.
Very good. Well, we have a comment from Jackson. It's pretty incredible to have a group this passionate about developing a community. Looking forward to learning and growing. Parentheses, much faster thanks to you all. Thank you for all you have done to tear down the barriers preventing people like me from getting into the industry.
We're glad you're here, Jackson. We're really glad you're here. I say that
Yes.
honestly. We've never met. I'm thrilled you're here.
Yeah.
Because this is an incredibly unique profession. I can't think of any other job I'd rather do.
Just
Absolutely.
the way that this community has grown organically and in such a supportive and close-knit, caring way with this many people across the entire world, it just continues to be amazing and humbling to me.
That's fantastic. We have Bruce suggesting onesies
Yes.
with MacAdmins version 0.5 beta.
Oh,
That's adorable.
MacAdmins bibs. Oh, on it. Oh my God. Please.
Update D on the bib so that it's appropriate, or the spit rag and things like that. Yeah, 100%.
Oh my gosh. I'm on board.
That's awesome. Okay, well, last anonymous joke, MacAdmin Cell Block 6,
Uh-oh.
chapter forthcoming.
Not if I have anything to say about it.
That's right.
Live from
Chapter-
Folsom
chapter
Prison.
forthcoming.
Yeah.
That's a show I'd attend. Well, that's great. If there's any other questions, feel free to enter in the Q&A now. And we'll give it just a minute, but I want to just thank everyone again for your work and support of the MacAdmins community and for taking your time to talk about it and be open and answer all of the questions that the community could throw at you. And I'm sure there'll be more.
Yeah.
And thanks for having
For
us.
sure. And
Yeah.
if think of it, drop it in the PSU Mac channel after the fact, or come find us in MacAdmins Foundation on the MacAdmins Slack.
That's great.
We
MacAdmins
also-
Foundation.
Yeah, macadmins.org has largely been an invite button for the Slack team. It will continue to operate as so for the time being, but it also has a lot of resources about the foundation already posted, including how to donate, how to get into contact with us, what our mission is. If you're going to your organization to say, hey, the MacAdmins has been an incredible resource for my career, I would love it if we could find $1,000 to give them to say thank you. We have information on there on how organizations can reach out to us and how they can donate in whatever means they find works best for them. We're also happy to have conversations with anyone about that kind of stuff. And as you all know, we're all on the Slack all the time too. Feel free to ask us if you have questions. We're all in the MacAdmins Foundation channel, and we are trying to be present there to answer questions and take feedback and all that good stuff. So hopefully you find that we are open and transparent and easy to access for anyone that wants to communicate with us, to get involved, to learn more. Yeah, macadmins.org.
We want to
We
make
are
the
all-
"we never close" statement true.
Mhm.
Very, very true. Very true.
We are all MacAdmins. All right. Well, thank you, Emily, Caleb, Tom, Rich, and
Don't
Is that
forget Chris.
okay?
You can't
Thank you,
forget Chris.
Chris.
I forgot
Thank you,
Chris
Chris.
once. You can't forget Chris.
Poor Chris.
He left me
Sorry,
at
Chris.
O'Hare, and
Wow.
That
It's
was
a
the
big
day he
airport.
did have to use his AK. Not a good day. Not a good day.
it has been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Appreciate
Penn
your
State
time
friends.
speaking today.
See you soon.
Thanks,
Thanks for
everyone.
having us.
Thanks
Bye.
for having us.